I appreciate the opportunity to be here and be with you. We're going to have a lot of fun. Each and every time I stand up in front of a group of people like this, somewhere in the world, to share for just a few minutes about some things in this life I believe to be important. Every time I do this, I am always reminded of that time in my life when this was not possible. It was 20 years ago. That day I woke up, I instantly realized I had lost the remainder of my sight, and I knew right then I would live the rest of my life as a blind person. And the thoughts and the doubts and the fears that came over me that morning, those 20 years ago, would be impossible to describe to you. I was 29 years old, I had never met a blind person, and I did not have a clue what I was going to do with the rest of my life. In fact, the only plan I could come up with that morning, those 20 years ago, involved moving into this little 9 by 12 foot room in the back of my house. And in my little room, I gathered my radio and my telephone and my tape recorder, and that was my whole world 20 years ago. I really fully intended to never walk out of that room again. The thought of running an international television network with over 1,000 stations, the thought of traveling 1 million miles a year and speaking to 1 million people in arena events, the thought of writing a dozen books or making movies, or the thought of being here today with you guys was as foreign to me as going to the moon. I couldn't imagine it. So I sat in my little 9 by 12 foot self-imposed prison, if you will, day after day after day, getting more and more depressed and more discouraged, and I'm quite certain I would still be there today, except for one thing. And that is the fact that I literally ached for people like you to come and talk to. So I want you to know what a thrill it is for me to be here. I do always like to warn my audiences, you do have a blind man wandering around up here, and I'm not wired up to anything today. On a bad day, I can wipe out 2 or 3 tables here. So at least you people down front, you want to pay really close attention, because this may get more exciting than you thought. I mean, I have it on good authority. If you die and show up at the pearly gates and St. Peter said, "How did you get here?" You tell him you got ran over by a blind Olympic weightlifter. I don't think you get in. I don't know for sure. We just don't know for sure. Anyway, it is exciting to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity. Before I go any further, I want to introduce you to a colleague of mine. You know, when you live your life like I do, and some of the most talented and gifted people in our field of television, movies, publishing, some of the best people in business are willing to dedicate their lives, or in my case, dedicate their eyes, to making it possible for you to do what you do. You take every opportunity, including ones like this, to simply say thank you. Rebecca Graham has become a tremendous part of our organization with our Ultimate Productivity Training, which you're all going to go through and hear a lot about. And we have a copy of the book here today. Each of you will be able to take one with you, and you'll be able to go through the workshops with Rebecca in the coming weeks and months. And she has trained Fortune 500 companies. She's been a lot of training in the Far East, in China, Singapore. She makes it possible for me to get from here to there, and she's quite simply the best there is at what she does. Would you please help welcome Rebecca Graham right over there. I'll never forget the first time I went out to make a speech after losing my sight. It's one of those experiences we all have that kind of keep us humble. And I had just started my company, the Narrative Television Network, and it was growing very quickly. And things were going great. And then, as often happens to us in business, one day when you've advanced a little bit, things are going well, you wake up one day and you realize, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Now, if this hasn't occurred to you, it may have already occurred to the people that work with you that you don't have a clue what you're doing. Well, that happened to me one day. One day I woke up and I realized there's probably no one in North America less qualified to run a television network than me. So I made the mistake a lot of us make in business. I hired a consultant. In fact, this should be avoided, but I was so paranoid, I actually hired 2 consultants. I went out to Los Angeles and I hired 2 entertainment industry business consultants. Now, you could tell these guys were entertainment industry business consultants because they had both the briefcase and the ponytail. That's very important in our television business. You've got to have the briefcase and the ponytail if you're going to be a television industry business consultant. And I hired these 2 guys from LA to come to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which you do realize is the entertainment capital of the world, right here in Northeast Oklahoma. And I hired these guys to go through our offices and studios over there on South Memorial and tell us how to run this business we were already running quite successfully. Well, they wandered around for several days and really pretty much annoyed everybody in the building, I think. And then they came into my office for the report. And they said, Jim, you're kind of new to the television industry, but as the owner and founder of this network and as the host of some of our on-air programming, you're supposed to get out and meet all of our station managers all across North America. You got to get out and schmooze these people. Well, we had over 1,000 stations, and I was just a little ways out of that 9 by 12 foot room I told you about. I could kind of stumble out of my house and fall into the back of a car and ride to the office and stumble around there all day and reverse the process in the evening. But when they told me they wanted me to go to 1,000 different towns and cities and meet these managers, plus I didn't even know what they meant to schmooze people. I had to look it up. I said, you may be able to schmooze people out in LA. I think you can get arrested in Oklahoma for, you just can't haul off and start schmoozing people here now. Well, I said, you know, you guys are getting paid too much and you're annoying everybody. Come up with a plan B on this. And they said, well, Jim, we'll think about it. A couple days later, they came back in and they said, we have an alternative, Jim. Based on your experience as an Olympic weightlifter and your success in business, we believe we could book you into arenas and convention centers all across the country as some kind of motivational success speaker, and then we'll invite our people in on a regional basis so they can meet you. And that way, Jim, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now, I never was quite sure why these guys from LA like to kill birds with stones, but apparently that's a big deal out there. In fact, the next time you're over on the left coast, please remember, the more birds you can kill with the fewer stones, the better these guys like it. Well, that's when I asked the question that gets us all in trouble here in the new millennium. I said, when would I have to start? My schedule, I'm sure, is a lot like yours, in that I don't know what I'm doing today after this session. So when they said, Jim, they book these big arena events at least 6 months in advance, well, I'll agree to anything 6 months from now. In fact, if your company, if you're getting up a group to swim the English Channel or climb Mount Everest or something in the fall, go ahead and sign me up today. I'll agree to anything 6 months from now. It doesn't matter what it is. Well, what seemed like a few days, certainly no more than a few weeks later, they come back down the hall to my office and they said, Jim, it's time to go. I said, go where? And they said, it's time to make one of those speeches you promised I should make. And I said, you clowns told me I had 6 months. And they said, Jim, trust us, it's been a full 6 months. You see, they always lie to the blind guy. And they think they get away with it. And in reality, I guess they do get away with it. I just like to let them know that I know they get away with it. I said, okay, where are we going? They said, Jim, we've booked you into the Anaheim Coliseum where you will be the motivational speaker for 14,000 state government workers. Now, if anybody here has ever worked for the state government or knows anybody working for the state government or even discovered anyone doing any work for the state government, you'll please excuse my next comment, but I thought being the motivational speaker for an arena full of state government workers was something really close to raising the dead, if you know what I mean. So we got out to California. Kathy Harper, our vice president, was traveling with me on that particular trip, and we're standing backstage, and I was trying to remember, now was it 12 steps or 13 to the front of that stage? Because that can be really critical at a certain point in time. And I was trying to remember, now where are all those potted palm trees they put out there on the stage? You guys, you meet a lot of people, you get around it. If you in your life ever run into the man or woman, whoever it was, who decided they should go into arenas, convention centers, television studios, right where a blind guy might be working, and they decided to put potted palm trees all over the place, if you run into that individual, would you let them know that I'd like to speak with them? Because over the last few years, I've had kind of a close personal relationship with some of those potted palm trees, to be honest about it. So I'm standing backstage in this arena. It's the first time I've made a speech since I'm totally blind, and I'm really nervous. And when you're blind, you pay really close attention. You become really aware of things around you. And I could just tell, I could kind of sense that someone had come up and they were standing right next to me. You ever had anybody kind of standing in your space, you know what I mean, a little too close for comfort? Well, there's somebody, they were standing right there, but they weren't making any noise. Now, folks, if we have a chance to meet later today after the program or at some point in the future, you have got to make some noise. If you don't make noise, I won't like you. May not like you anyway, but if you don't make noise, we don't have a chance. Well, there's this person, they're standing right there. I could just sense they're not making any noise. So I turned to Kathy, I said, look, I'm really nervous. I forgot where all the potted palm trees are, and I think there's somebody standing here. And she said, Jim, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's a guy standing right next to you, and he's holding up a note in front of your face for you to read. I said, you got to be kidding. I'm a little tense here. I got to go out here and raise these people from the dead. I don't need this. What does this guy's note say? Kathy leaned over and said, now, Jim, the note reads, I am deaf. Can you help me find the front desk? So I turned to the deaf guy. I said, no, I'm blind. I can't help you find nothing. Got 14,000 people in the building. You got to ask me where the front desk is. I mean, even the state government workers could probably help you if you got 2 or 3 together, you know? So I turned back to Kathy and I said, what's he doing now? She said, he's holding the note closer. So I explained it to him even louder, and folks, we never did get together on that thing. And somewhere here in America, there is still a poor deaf man wandering around looking for the front desk, and if you run across it, I would appreciate it if you would help him out. That's one of the things we're going to talk about today is communication. Because don't ever forget, just because you're talking don't mean anybody's listening, and just because they're listening don't mean they get it. It's just that simple. And I'm excited to be here. This has been a long road. Several years ago, it'll be 2 years this coming summer, I was in New York City, and as I generally do when I'm in New York, I meet with Steve Forbes, and we spend an hour together discussing business and various opportunities and things. And we were sitting there, and over the last several years, I have had the opportunity to have a number of my novels turned into movies. And he said, Jim, when are you going to write another business book? And I said, well, this movie thing and the novels are going really well for me, right now, Steve. And he said, yeah, but your first 7 or 8 books were all business books, how-to, success books, and then you've written 7 or 8 novels, and now all the movies, and there's a whole group of people out there, a whole generation of people, and they just think you're some kind of novelist that makes movies, and if you're ever going to write another business book, you need to do it. Well, I thought about that, and I said, well, if we're going to do it, what would we talk about? And I'm going to have you involved, and we talked about taking the themes of some of my books and movies like The Ultimate Gift, The Ultimate Life, The Ultimate Journey, and some of the other things we're working on, and getting a practical guide for people. It's one thing to motivate people. People can be all motivated, but you've got all this energy and you're looking for some place to plug it in. You're all dressed up, you got nowhere to go. And so I realized nobody succeeds on their own. Everybody's part of a team. Everybody that's successful is part of a team. I don't care who you are. And I thought, who's the best team builder in the world today? And it was my friend, at the time, 98-year-old Coach John Wooden, who has rewritten all the record books in athletics and brought that talent to the business world. And we lost him last year, just a couple of months before his 100th birthday. And the word legend gets overused, but he truly was. And he and Steve Forbes and I kind of developed this program called Ultimate Productivity that deals with motivation, communication, and implementation. You'll all get the book today with the foreword from Steve Forbes and a lot of the teaching and training that Coach Wooden helped us with. And it's one of the things we're bringing to Bama, and I'm really, really excited about it. And each of you will have an opportunity to go through a productivity workshop that Rebecca will lead you through. And you'll each take a productivity profile. It's very short, quick, and simple. And you'll find out where your strengths are in the areas of motivation, communication, and implementation. Those are the things you've got to do to succeed here at the workplace and succeed in life in the things that matter to you. It all starts with motivation. I don't care who you are, it's the first thing you get when you come into this world, and it's the last thing you leave behind when you leave this world is motivation. And if you don't feel that kind of power and passion about what you do all day, every day, you need to find something new to do, or you need to find a new attitude, because we all need that motivation. Unfortunately, in the corporate world, we do a lousy job motivating our people. I learned this several years ago. I was on a flight leaving Tulsa. One of the only good things about being blind is you get to pre-board on the plane. That's about it. I don't recommend it, but if you ever do find yourself running around blind, at least get on the plane early. That's the only thing you get out of it. Well, I got on the plane early, and I fly a lot of miles, and I could tell something was different about this. There was a guy on there vacuuming, the flight attendants were running around cleaning everything, everybody was tense and excited and everything, and I got on and I sat down.